Since the Roe versus Wade decision, where do we stand today on the issue of abortion? What impact has that decision had on our society, and where do we go from here? Joining us now to discuss these and other issues are Kathy Gallagher, the Director of Pro-Life Activities for the New York State Catholic Conference, Andrew Daub, the Director of Training and Education for the American Life League, Erica Pelletreau, Legislative Director for the National Abortion Rights Action League in New York State, and Nora Baru of the South Suffolk chapter of the National Organization for Women. I want to thank you all for being here. Let me begin. Certainly I'm going to ask questions. I want everyone to have the opportunity to answer. But let me begin with you, Ms. Pelletreau. Since the Roe versus Wade decision occurred, how do you think society has dealt with legalized abortion?
Well, the biggest impact since the legalization of abortion in this country is that tens of thousands of women who used to die pre the legalization of this health care procedure are now alive. That's the biggest way that it's impacted our society. Women now have the right to choose and to access health care safely and legally.
But women are still dying from legal abortion. I mean, we hear about those cases all the time in supposedly safe and legal licensed clinics here in New York State.
At a much, much lower rate than the tens of thousands who died pre-Roe.
The fact of the matter is, though, that babies are dying. I mean, for us, that's the heart of this matter, that in every abortion, a beating heart is stopped and a human life is taken.
That's your definition of what a baby is.
I was just going to say that
What
also.
What is
a baby?
of a baby, Erica?
Post-viability?
Post-viability, okay.
Right.
Well, for us, our definition of a child, of a human life, is beginning at the moment of fertilization and conception, continuing onward. Because rationally or logically, any way you look at it, whether it's in terms of biological development or you look at it in terms of religious philosophy, there's no other point in the development of the child that life can actually begin.
But there's no doubt that the taking of, that abortion is the taking of a human life. I mean, everyone concedes that. The question is under what circumstances is it appropriate to do so? And the answer from the pro-life side, from my point of view, is it is never appropriate to do so.
I went to the yellow pages in the telephone book. Now, this is the year abortion was legal. This is 1973. So I've read a lot about abortion. I didn't really hear a lot in the churches, but I remember thinking in the back of my head that if the United States of America Supreme Court says that this procedure should be legal, well then, my God, there's nothing wrong with it.
We've got many issues here, issues of self-determination, issues of, as you were saying very articulately before, women choosing how, when, and where, and why they want to lead their lives in certain ways. And that has to do with political empowerment, it has to do with moral empowerment, it has to do with issues of self-determination.
And I believe in my own right as a woman. I believe in my own self-autonomy. I have the right to get a transplant if I want. I have a right to get an implant if I want. But when my decisions impact another human being, an unborn child with a beating heart, with active brainwaves, who might be a different sex than I am, it's clearly not my body if it's a different sex than I am, I don't think I have the right to take that child's life. I don't think anybody has the right to take that child's life.
Radically do I disagree with that statement. In my perception of it, it's not a taking of a life at all.
What is it the right to choose then, Erica?
The right to choose what? The right to choose when you want to have children.
But it's the right
That's
to
the
terminate
right that you're
a pregnancy,
choosing.
right? It's
yeah.
the right to terminate
either to terminate a pregnancy or to take contraceptives, or for me it has to do with a whole host of healthcare issues. It's about access to the safest legal healthcare procedures that we know of.
But it's
That's what it's about.
It's not like an appendectomy or a tonsillectomy. There's another human life here. It's not tonsils. It's not a toenail. It's a baby.
What about alternatives? Are there any realistic alternatives? And how realistic are the chances here?
Let's start with talking about education and access to contraception so that people can avoid the situation of having an unattended pregnancy.
Let's go even before that. Let's go to something we can agree on. We can probably all agree that we want to reduce unplanned pregnancies, right? You go about it through contraceptive modes.
Right.
We go about it through sexual abstinence training and education for young people.
But I think that there's a way for that all to work
we're going
together.
to the same thing.
Right?
We're going to the same
so
objective.
that access to contraception, abstinence-based education, I mean, these are different choices that we're allowing young people to make. And I think that young people, I'm specifically referring to young people because that's where a lot of these educational programs happen, is in the high schools. They need to be presented with the full range of information to make the choices that they feel like they want to make.
Why, though? I don't understand why, when we know that safe sex, quote unquote, is not truly safe.
Though there is no such thing as safe sex. It's safer
No, there's
sex.
safer
Right?
sex,
It's safer
safest,
sex.
But they should be aware.
It doesn't
They should know all the possibilities and be able to choose with training and with help from their parents and teachers and religious people what they want to do.
You can give them all the training in the world you want about safer
Well,
sex.
that's
You can give them all the
what you
education
do.
you want.
I mean,
It's not going to make it safer. It's not going to make it healthier for them psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever number of things you want to throw in there. The only choice that makes sense, whether you look at it physically, emotionally, otherwise,
Wait a
is to
minute.
remain
Hang
chaste.
on a
Makes
second
sense to
here.
whom?
You're making
Even
those
if you say
choices
choice.
for somebody else, right? And I'm talking about letting people make their own decisions. This is a difference between what you're talking about and what I'm talking about. I'm talking about young people, I'm talking about women, I'm talking about all sorts of people
Even if
being,
you know that choice
being
isn't safe
able
for
to
them.
make up their own mind.
I have no regrets about it because I wouldn't want to subject the life of the child to poverty, basically, if I was not able to increase my income, and not having me there, which is a primary principle in child rearing that is very defective in the modern world today. And that was my reason for choosing to have an abortion at that time.
I've often thought about, you know, was this child a boy? Was it a girl? I don't know, in prayer one time, through this healing ministry that I participated in, Project Rachel, I was one of the first 2 men in the Diocese of Rockville Center to go through what they call the scripture study for men, healing a father's heart. And in this process, they asked you, you know, pray to God, ask him to let you have an idea of what was his child, you know, and even his name came to me. I never experienced prayer like this before. I got a sense that it was a boy. His name was Michael. That's not normally a typical prayer experience for me. If it was a boy and if his name was Michael, he'd be 20 years old today. When I think about that, when I think about that child the most, I have a daughter today. I watched her be born. You know, I watched her come into the world. And at the moment I saw her head and they cleaned her up and passed her to me, there were so many emotions that went through me at that moment. One, I was like, nobody will ever be able to convince me that from the moment of conception, that's not a child. Because maybe it started out as a clump of cells, but 9 months later, this is what God gave me.
In a nutshell, abortion almost took my life. And I often would think it was easier for the women that died on the abortion tables because they didn't have to suffer every day with the knowledge that they had a part in the killing of their innocent, defenseless child.
It seems that pro-life versus pro-choice will remain one of the more controversial and passionate issues of our time. We've heard from doctors, clergy, people who have experienced abortion firsthand, some pro-life and others pro-choice. Well, where do you stand? If ever in that situation, what would you do? It's our hope that we've presented you enough information to make an informed decision. And now that you've heard what our guests have said, we'd like to hear from you. If you have questions or comments related to tonight's program, please send them to Abortion Today, WLNY, New York 55, 270 South Service Road, Melville, New York, 11747. Or you can email us at WLNYTV@AOL.com. Thank you for watching, and good night.